What's up, guys? I'm here once again for another top 10 fantasy football rank show. Today we're talking about receivers. Receivers, in my opinion, is probably the deepest it's ever been. The passing game is at its highest it's ever been, and these wide receivers are benefiting from it. All the guys I'm going to talk about, 1 through 10, are all going to go in the first 2 rounds, probably in the first 20 to 25 picks, guaranteed, unless your league doesn't value wide receivers that high. I got a couple sleepers for you. One that will be picked in the 4th round or later, and then also one really late, a deep sleeper probably in the 8th, 10th round. So starting at number 1, we have Antonio Brown. No surprise here. The top 3 guys, you already know who they are. Antonio Brown, number 1. We know who he is. He does it every year. He's as long as he stays healthy and Big Ben stays healthy, guaranteed to get 120 catches, 1,600 yards, and double-digit touchdowns. Last year, 136, 1,800 yards, 10 touchdowns. This year, I project him for 130 catches again, 1,800 yards, and 12 touchdowns. I think is a couple more touchdowns, especially with Martavius Bryant not in the picture. So those touchdowns have to go to someone. I think they go to Antonio Brown. At number 2, again, no surprise, Julio Jones. I really, really like him, especially in PPR, same as Antonio Brown. Last year, he had the same amount of catches as Antonio Brown, 136, 1,800 yards, and 8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns is the only thing that hurt him last year. I think that changes. I think this year he gets 120 receiving receptions, 1,800 yards, and also 12 touchdowns. So he's right there with Antonio Brown, a couple less catches. He does have somewhat of an injury prone. He never missed any games, but he's always like, he has a thigh injury. He's questionable. That's the only question mark you really have with him. He's the number 1 receiver in Atlanta. Doesn't really have many weapons around him. They did have Mohamed Sanu and they have Devontae Freeman, but really, really like Julio Jones this year. Number 3, also no surprise, Odell Beckham Jr. This guy, absolutely incredible what he does week in and week out. Last year, even with missing a game, still had 96 catches, 1,450 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Any of these top 3 guys could be number 1 receiver at the end of the year. Would not be surprised whatsoever. I project 100 catches, 1,500 yards, and 13 touchdowns for Odell. So maybe not as many yards as the top 2 guys or catches, but still absolutely incredible. He could get 16 touchdowns this year. He has that red zone threat, even though I don't think he's over 6 feet tall. I think he's like 5'11" or just 6 feet at his tallest. So he's number 3. Number 4, DeAndre Hopkins. I really, really like him. Underrated from last year. He had 111 catches for 1,521 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. Great guy. They did a lot of receivers in the draft, as well as getting Lamar Miller. So it's going to be a more balanced approach. So I don't think he'll have as many receptions or receiving yards, but still, he's a guy you can get in the mid to late 1st round, and you can still be extremely satisfied with what he's going to give you. I project 100 catches for 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns. Also not injury prone, going into his, I believe, his 3rd or 4th year. Young guy. Not a burner, but in PPR leagues, he's going to be great because he'll get you that 100 catches pretty well. Moving to number 5, this is where you kind of drop a tier to kind of the 2nd round guys or your very, very late 1st round, depending on how big your league is. Number 5, I have AJ Green. Super consistent. He's almost guaranteed to get you, 80 catches for 1,100 yards and double-digit touchdowns. And that's what he did last year. 86 catches, just under 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. I'm projecting for the same thing. 85 catches, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. You know what you're going to get with him. He could sneak into the top 3 because they did lose Marvin Jones. They did lose Mohamed Sanu. So those targets have to go somewhere, but also double teams have to go somewhere, and they may go to A.J. Green. He does have Tyler Eifert, which will eat into his total touchdowns, but Eifert's injured, so who knows where that could go. I like him. I know a lot of people have him a little bit lower, but I like A.J. Green, number 5. At number 6, this is really the only big injury risk guy, and that's Dez Bryant. He has all-world potential. He could be number 1 for no, but he has a big injury risk. Plus, he plays Tony Romo. Is he healthy? Last year, an injury-filled year, 31 catches for 401 yards and 3 touchdowns. Broke a bone in his foot and missed, I believe it was like 6 weeks, something like that. But like I said, high potential. I do project him for 80 catches, 1,200 yards, but 12 touchdowns. Just the year before last, 14 total touchdowns, so he can easily reach almost a touchdown per game, as long as Tony Romo stays healthy and he stays healthy. So Dez Bryant, number 6. Number 7, Allen Robinson. Oh boy, did he have a breakout year last year. I like him again. Not a big PPR guy, but he's going to score a lot of touchdowns and get a lot of yards. Last year had 80 receptions for 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. And I don't think he'll do as good this year. I project him for, once again, 80 catches for 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. He does have a little bit of question mark. They added Chris Ivory. Maybe they're going a little bit more balanced attack. Their defense is better, so they won't have to put up as many points. But, again, I really, really like him. He's going to go early second round. Most likely won't get picked in the first round. But I like him. Does have a lot of upside. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns. That's where his value is really, really going to peak. So if you're not in a PPR, this guy's really good. He's going to get a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. Number 8, this may be a little bit of a surprise, Keenan Allen, especially in a PPR league. This guy last year missed time because of an injury, and it wasn't like a weird, it was a weird injury. It wasn't like, oh no, he tore his ACL, or he hurt his ankle, or he pulled the groin. Like, no, he had a lacerated spleen or kidney. It was one of those two. So very strange. That's something that happens all the time. And he was on pace to be with guys like Julio and Antonio. So last year, had 67 catches, 725 yards, and 4 touchdowns. This guy is a great guy for PPR. Not going to score a ton of touchdowns. I don't think he reaches double digits. I project him for 105 catches, 1,200 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That touchdowns number is rough. I almost doubled what he did last year, but it would have been close to 140 catches, which I don't think he'll do that. But good receiver. You can pick him mid to late second round. He could go earlier if you're in a PPR league. This is a guy you want to target, especially early second round, because a lot of these receivers are going to be gone. I'm really high on him. I know not everyone else is. At number 9, you've been waiting for him, Brandon Marshall. Yeah, oh, there he is. But he's so low. Why? That's because, is Geno Smith going to be his starting quarterback? If he is, I do not like him. Plus, he has Eric Decker stealing some stuff from the other side as well. He's another year older. He's over 30. Last year, he did have an incredible year. 109 catches, 1,500 yards, and 14 touchdowns. This year, I project him for 90 catches, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And that's really could be conservative, could be overly conservative. It all depends on who's quarterback. If it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, you really could bump him up to number 6, number 7, somewhere up there. But just uncertainty and another year older. Still really like him. He's going to be early second round because I have him lower than a lot of other people. Number 10, Jordy Nelson. His biggest question mark is injuries. He's just coming off an ACL tear. Now, granted, it was back in training camp, so it's been just about 12 months when this video is going up that he missed. I really like him. He's the number 1 receiver for Aaron Rodgers, so automatically that makes him a top 15 receiver just because of that alone. Last year didn't have any stats. This year I project him for 80 catches, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Again, this is a guy that has a high upside, just question marks with injuries. So he is number 10. And 2 sleepers for you. The guy you can pick in the 4th, 5th round, Sammy Watkins. Really like him. Not a guy I love for PPR, but still like. But definitely going to score touchdowns, get yards. Missed a couple games last year, so injuries are kind of there, but he's a young guy, so you expect him to recover. They finally have a decent quarterback there in Buffalo. Last year had 60 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I project him for 80 catches, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Super high upside. The weather up there, it can be very snowy and windy. So receiving is kind of iffy, and will Tyrod Taylor be healthy the whole time? But still, really, really like Sammy Watkins. And then a guy you can pick really, really late, who's a little bit more unique, is Tavon Austin, a guy you can pick in like 8th, 9th, 10th round even. Like him a lot. Now, his receiving numbers from last year, 52 catches for just under 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. You hear that and go, okay, why is he even a top 100 receiver? Because he can get you a lot of stuff on the ground. He had 400 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns last year. And I think he'll do that same thing rushing, just transfer it to this year, 404. And then 65 catches for 650 yards and 5 touchdowns. You add that up together, and that's about 1,000 total yards, about 10 total touchdowns. So, along with 60 catches. So, this guy's a risk. He's a great guy. I love to have as the first receiver off the bench. As a flex, I'm a little risky, and depending on whether or not your league allows return yards, he gets that as well. Just a Swiss Army knife. He can do it all. He'll get 4 or 5 rushing attempts for 25 yards, and 3-4 catches for 30-40 yards, and maybe a touchdown, and then 40 return yards. But all that equals 10 plus points in fantasy. So like him as a sleeper. So there you go. There's your top 10 wide receivers. Not too many big surprises. Just the rankings maybe a little bit different than what you've seen. Those are the guys I like and why. Really quick, number 1, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Dez Bryant, Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, Brandon Marshall, Jordy Nelson, and then 2 sleepers for you, Sammy Watkins and Tavon Austin. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm sure you guys disagree with me. Go ahead, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to see more fantasy football. Next is the top 10 fantasy tight ends. This is very interesting. We know who number 1 is, but after that, it's all open. And you get to see my opinion on that. Have a great day, guys.